INFJs, you were damaged before you could protect yourself. And that truth, it echoes in the quiet spaces of your soul where no one ever dared to look. Before you had the words to articulate what hurt you, before you knew the difference between love and control, between support and manipulation, you were already absorbing the emotional weight of others, already shaping yourself around what others needed, already betraying yourself just to keep the peace. This video is not just another exploration of your personality type, it's a sacred mirror. A reflection of the parts of you that have been misunderstood, misused, and muffled. It's not for the world to understand you. It's for you to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Let's go deeper than you've ever dared. Because healing begins with facing what was never fair to begin with. 1. The silent wound of early awareness. From a very young age, you saw more than you were supposed to. While other children lived freely in their emotional worlds, yours was already filled with concern. Concern for the pain behind your parents' smiles. Concern for the tone behind your teacher's voice. Concern for the silent suffering your siblings tried to hide. And as young as you were, you began to carry burdens that were never meant for your shoulders. You didn't just witness emotions, you absorbed them. You weren't taught to do this. You were this. But no one noticed your silent sacrifice. You were praised for being well-behaved, sensitive, and mature beyond your years. But behind that maturity was a child aching for protection, a child who needed what she was giving to everyone else: understanding, validation, and gentleness. And that's the first layer of your damage. No one protected you. 2. The abandonment of the true self. Because the world didn't know how to hold your depth, you learned to hide it. You learned to wear masks, smiles, nods, polite compliance, anything to avoid confrontation, to avoid rejection, to avoid the painful sting of being too much. You began to abandon your true self long before you realized you had one. You learned to disconnect from your intuition, your inner voice, your feelings, because they were too inconvenient for others. And so, you became a chameleon, molding yourself to environments, conversations, and relationships that only cared for the surface version of you. The damage wasn't always in what was said, it was in what was ignored. Your true self was exiled to the deepest corners of your being. Silenced. Forgotten. Until one day, you couldn't even tell if the life you were living was yours at all. 3. The unseen trauma response of the INFJs. Your trauma response didn't look like rebellion. It didn't look like outbursts. It looked like perfectionism. People-pleasing. Hyper-independence. Emotional numbness. Intellectual overdrive. You became the therapist in your friend group. The peacemaker in your family. The one who never needs help, never asks for much, never causes trouble. Because somewhere deep inside, you believed that the more invisible your needs were, the more lovable you'd be. And the world rewarded this. But you? You paid the price. Your body stored the stress. Your mind replayed the silent betrayals. Your soul grew tired. And here's the heartbreaking part. The damage made you feel unworthy of softness. 4. The double-edged sword of empathy. Your empathy, the very thing that makes you so special, was both your superpower and your shackles. You felt everything, but you had no one to feel you. People dumped their problems on you because you listened without judgment. They vented, unloaded, and walked away feeling lighter, never realizing they left their emotional baggage with you. You smiled, nodded, and held space for them, while inside you felt like you were drowning. And still, you stayed kind. Because you believed that if you could just give enough, love enough, understand enough, maybe someone would finally do the same for you. But the world rarely gives back what INFJs give away. 5. The mask of strength that hides the pain. You became the strong one. The one who has it all together, the one people admire. But that strength? It was a survival strategy. A carefully crafted mask. Behind that strength was a desperate hope that someone, anyone, would see through it and say, "You don't have to be strong all the time." But no one did. Because you hid it too well. You cracked jokes when you were in pain. You helped others when you were barely holding on. You showed up, even when no one showed up for you. And now, the mask is so convincing that even you forget how badly you need to be held. 6. The INFJ's internal exile. You live with a permanent ache. A homesickness for a self you haven't seen in years. You dream of disappearing, not to escape the world, but to return to yourself. You want silence, not because you hate people, but because their noise drowns out your intuition. You crave solitude, not because you're broken, but because in isolation, you begin to hear the whispers of the self you lost. And maybe that's the tragedy of being an INFJ. You're always searching for a home within a world that doesn't understand the architecture of your soul. But the exile can end if you dare to stop running from yourself. 7. The power in brokenness. Yes, you were damaged before you could protect yourself. But that doesn't make you weak. In fact, that makes you powerful in a way most people will never understand. Because you didn't just survive, you alchemized your pain into insight. You turned wounds into wisdom. You transformed trauma into truth. You learned to love others deeply because you know what it feels like to be unloved. You learned to listen fiercely because you know what it feels like to be unheard. You learned to be gentle because you know what violent silence can do. Your brokenness became your blueprint for healing others. But now, INFJ, it's time to use that blueprint on yourself. 8. The journey back to your self-healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means remembering yourself, the self before the damage. The self that was never allowed to bloom. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to uncover yourself. Beneath the layers of guilt, duty, and performance is a person so radiant, so intuitive, so tender, that even your pain couldn't extinguish them. Reclaim that child. Speak to them. Hold them. Tell them they are safe now. Because you've become the protector you never had. And now, your healing doesn't just begin, it expands. 9. Rewriting the INFJ narrative. Narrator. The world painted you as the quiet one. The fragile one. The mysterious one. But that's not your truth. Your truth is that you are fierce. You are intuitive beyond reason. You are emotionally intelligent in ways science still doesn't fully understand. You are spiritually anchored in a way that terrifies shallow minds. You were damaged before you could protect yourself. But now, you are the protector. You are the guardian of your own soul. Your softness is no longer a liability, it's a weapon of light. Your solitude is no longer exile, it's sacred ground. And your story? It's no longer hidden in shame. It's spoken in strength. 10. The renaissance of the INFJ spirit. There comes a point in the INFJ's life where something shifts, where the silence becomes too sacred to be broken by inauthenticity, where the self-abandonment begins to feel like betrayal, and where your longing for truth outweighs your fear of being misunderstood. This is your renaissance, the rebirth of your truest self. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in the quiet moments. When you finally say no, when you finally rest without guilt, when you look at your reflection and don't see damage, you see resilience. The world never celebrated your softness. But now, you no longer need its validation. Because you have remembered who you are. And who you are, is unshakable. 11. The weight of invisible scars. INFJs walk through life with a kind of elegance that masks the depth of their suffering. They laugh with others while bleeding internally, never letting their pain overshadow someone else's moment. But invisible scars are still scars. And for the INFJ, these are the heaviest ones. The wound of always being the one who understands but rarely being understood. The ache of giving so much and watching people vanish when you need just a fraction of what you gave. The trauma of being blamed for your silence, when all you ever wanted was someone who could hear what words couldn't say. These wounds don't leave marks on your skin, but they etch themselves into your sense of worth. And INFJs carry these like silent warriors, with no medals, no applause, just quiet endurance. But enduring doesn't mean healing. And it's okay to admit that you're not okay. That you never should have had to carry what you did. 12. When compassion turns against you. Your compassion has always been a gift, but when it's not protected, it becomes a weapon used against you. How many times have you loved someone back to wholeness only to be discarded once they no longer needed you? How many times have you forgiven what broke you just to keep the peace? You see, INFJ, people don't always know how to hold your kind of love. It's too deep, too steady, too honest. And instead of rising to meet it, they run from it, or worse, take advantage of it. That's why boundaries aren't just self-care for you, they're survival. They're not about pushing people away, they're about letting the right ones in. Ones who don't fear your light. Ones who don't exploit your softness. You were never meant to save everyone. You were meant to be, fully, freely, fiercely. 13. The sacred fire of becoming. There's a fire within you. Quiet, yes, but powerful. This fire doesn't roar. It simmers. It purifies. It transforms. It's the fire that burns illusions, breaks generational cycles, and lights the path for others who are still lost in the dark. Every INFJ who's done the deep inner work knows this fire. It starts as pain, grows into purpose, and ends in peace. This fire is what makes you a lighthouse for the lost and a storm for the false. Let no one dim that fire again. Let no past wound, no ex-lover, no parent's neglect, no friend's betrayal, no boss's manipulation ever again tell you that your inner light is too much. Because it's not too much, it's sacred. 14. The unapologetic awakening. There comes a day, quiet, almost unnoticed, when the INFJ finally stops apologizing for being who they are. They stop over-explaining their silence. They stop shrinking for others' comfort. They stop entertaining shallow conversations and toxic cycles. This day doesn't come with a grand announcement. It comes in the pause before a yes becomes a no, in the moment you choose to rest instead of rescue. In the second you decide that your truth matters more than their approval. And in that moment, you awaken. Not into someone new, but into someone whole. You are not a fixer. You are not a sponge for others' dysfunction. You are not a mirror for their projections. You are you, and that is finally enough. INFJ, you were damaged before you could protect yourself. But now, you are healing in ways that don't just save you. They liberate every past version of you who thought survival was the only option. You're no longer waiting to be seen. You're learning to see yourself. You're no longer craving to be chosen. You're choosing yourself. You're no longer mourning the love you never received. You're becoming the love you always needed. This is your story. Messy, brave, divine. So here's to you. The INFJ who walked through fire and came out as light. Who still offers love despite the heartbreak. Who still believes in people despite the betrayals. But most importantly, who is finally learning to believe in themselves. You are not your wounds. You are the one who survived them. And now, you rise. You are no longer broken. You are becoming. If this resonated with your soul, subscribe, share, and comment below how you are reclaiming your story. Stay safe, and see you in the next one.